My name is Everett Green, the son of Leander Green, who fought in the First World War and was issued the Distinguished Service Medal and the Medal of Honor.
So your father, so when did he join up? Did he join in the Navy, the Army, regiment?
No, he lived in St. John's Without, and he was a fisherman down there. So he decided to go into St. John's and get a berth on the sealing vessel. So him and another man walked up from St. John's to the country and got the train in the combat chance and came out to St. John's to wait for the boat to come to pick them up to go seal hunting. So the boat never arrived for him to go seal hunting. So the military had a training boat there. So they decided to go and join the military. And they were there for 28 days training. And after the 28 days, they came back to St. John's, went fishing again until they were called up by the military to report back to St. John's to go overseas to fight in the war, First World War.
Okay, you mentioned to me, apparently your father was known as a hero, like for his bravery. Like what did he do to get that kind of recognition?
Well, there are two stories. They were out to sea. Now, he was with the British Army, the Royal British Army. They were out to sea. And they were attacked by the Germans. He was out on the deck, and he got his arm broken with a piece of flying shrapnel. So they fired at the torpedo and got it, destroyed it. And then they got a dispatch about a Norwegian passenger ship was sinking as a result of a torpedo, a German torpedo, fired at it. So they got the location of that boat, and they went back. The ships that my father was in at the time had no rescue boats on them. So when they arrived on the scene, the ship was demasted, the Norwegian ship was sinking, and there was people out in the water. It was at night. So the captain of my father's ship asked for people to volunteer to jump over and swim across to the sinking passenger ship. Two people stepped forward. They went, jumped, they lost their lives. So the captain asked for someone else. My father stepped forward, and he took the rope and wrapped it around his chest. He took the end of it in his mouth, and he jumped. And he swam across to the boat, and they saved lives. They saved a lot of lives. And then to get back, he had to turn around and swim back and get it back aboard of his ship. They hauled him back aboard of his ship. This was in midnight now. And from the story and the things I heard my father say, it was very, very rough seas. But another scenario I've heard, that there was a Norwegian cargo ship, it was, and it took on water, and it got a leak, and it was sinking. And so my father was associated with that too. So there's two scenarios, but I think the real one is the first one, with the torpedo. So anyway, he was given the Distinguished Service Medal, and the medal from the King of Norway. So I have the two medals here. I have all his medals here that I'll show you in a little bit. So anyway, when the war was over, he came back to Newfoundland. He went back to St. John's without fishing, like most all the men and women did then. And he decided to move from St. John's up to Sunnyside, Trinity Bay. I was a year old then, born in Walwyn Hospital. I was a year old. I grew up in Sunnyside. So my father and my brother, Bertram, my father had a schooner. So my father and my brother, Bertram, took the schooner and went out fishing in that schooner. So my father decided that he was going to quit the fishing. And because of his arm, when the shrapnel struck his arm on the ship he was on, it split his arm off. So they had to take him and bring him to closest place was Scotland. And so he took him to Scotland, and he was in the hospital in Scotland for 3 or 4 months. And they had to cut his arm, and they put a plate on his arm with 4 screws in the plate. And he was like that for a long time. He couldn't do much. He never went to work after. So he quit the fishing, and he sort of, I guess, retired. And he decided to buy a car. But he never ever had a driver's license. So what he did, he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, now, I'll start with the oldest driver. And as the oldest driver goes away, he said, then the next one will take it, and the next one, it came down to me. I was the last one to drive his car. And he'd go to church. And prior to getting the car, he'd walk to church every Sunday evening, right down around the harbour at Sunnyside. I wasn't very tall then, very big. And coming home, he pretty well dragged me home because I was falling asleep after church. But anyway, he got a car, and I used to drive him everywhere. And people would call the house for taxi to want to go into Walwyn Hospital. And my father would say, now Everett, yes, drive him in, but don't charge him any more than $1. Not a cent more than $1. And I'd go in and pick him up and drive him back and forth like that, you know. And he was very generous to people, you know. He sometimes, everybody's not on the same financial level, you know what I mean? Some is more richer than others. Many times, he took a $20 bill and stuck in my pocket. And he'd say, now Everett, bring this to so-and-so, you know what I mean? And I would do that. And probably a couple of weeks after, that same person would give me back $20 to bring back to my father. And I'd bring it back. He said, where are you going? Where'd you get that? And I told him, you get back. He said, and bring that back. He wouldn't take it. So I'd bring it back and give it back to him. So that's the type of person he was.
So now those heroic stories you just mentioned, like I'm assuming, like, did everyone in his community know what he did?
Well, not everybody, because he never talked about it much, you know, about the war and what he had done and that. When he came back to St. John's, before he moved to Sunnyside, some nights he'd be moving around in the bed and he'd be right restless and that, you know. And my mother would say, Leander, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? You're not going to sleep. Well, he said, I don't think Aunt and Uncle, whoever they were, got enough for their breakfast tomorrow morning. That's why he wasn't sleeping. So she said he'd get out of bed, 3 o'clock in the morning, and go down and pack up a little cardboard box full of food, and he'd walk around the harbour, and he'd go up, they never closed the doors down those places then, you know. And he'd open the door, and he'd slide the box of food in, and then he'd come on back and get in the bed, then go to sleep.
Wow. Now, of course, I have heard that there was a ceremony. It was in Sunnyside. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. So how did that come about? Would you know?
Yes, I do. A couple of years ago, the management of the military in Ottawa decided they were going to have 2 busts made. And what they did for the First World War, so what they did, they gave all the people that my father worked with, they gave them all their charts of how they did and so on and so forth and how they worked. And anyway, out of it all, they decided that my father deserved, because of what he did, deserved to get the busts. So they created 2 busts. One was unveiled in the Royal Museum in Ottawa. They had a pretty good session up there, you know, a lot of people there. And then they came to Sunnyside with the other one. And it was the biggest crowd ever I've seen in Sunnyside. All the people from the military in Halifax and the commander of the Eastern Region in Halifax and people from Ottawa and the Governor General and her husband here, they were all there. The Sunnyside was full of people. And they went to the cenotaph first, and we had sort of a service. Then we all marched from there down to the Legion in Sunnyside, and had a dinner and everything there. And the second mass for Sunnyside was unveiled there in Sunnyside in the Legion.
Your father's name is on it. Like, how's that make you feel to know that he's recognized in a new war memorial that's been unveiled last year in Hodges Cove?
Oh, wonderful! We were there.
Oh, you were there?
When it was unveiled, yeah.
Oh, in Hodges Cove, like the new war memorial.
I think, let you say last fall?
Last fall, yeah.
No, we were there to something prior to that.
Ah, okay.
But we will go down there and see.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, because they have an honor roll there. They have from the regiment, World War I, World War II. In fact, they recently unveiled 2 storyboards.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my great uncle,
Yes.
Simeon Whalen, he's on one of the storyboards. He went down with the HMS Bayonne. That was torpedoed. No, but your father's name is one of the names that's on the new war memorial. How much does that mean to you, knowing that he's there?
Very honorable. It means everything.
Do you think your father will be proud?
Oh, yes. Yeah. We go to church after we got the car. Out the car. He didn't never drive. So I'd be driving. We'd go down around the harbour. Going down, he would pick up people till the car was full. And then we'd go down the aisle, get out and go to church. So when we get out of church, he would say to me, "Now, Everett, we're not going to bring back the same crowd. We'll bring back a different group." So we'd fill the car up as we came along, picked them all up. And he used to say, "Now drive me home now to my dinner." And I'd drop them off in the driveway. And now he said, "Go and drop those people off at their house." So I'd go back around Sunnyside again and drop them all off where they lived. So that's the type of person he was.
Were there any other people in the community besides him that served that he knew, or did he mention of anyone?
One person, a man Drover. Drover, yeah, a man Drover. Now, they were together when they were in the military, but I don't know to what extent. No.
Okay. Were there any other interesting stories or experience that he may have brought up that wasn't as well known? Because we all know about the heroic stuff that he did, but were there any little offshoot things?
Well, he told me that when he was at sea in the summertime, in the winter, or whenever, when he was at sea working, if he was off, he'd go to church in the chapel. And he said when he was in port, in whatever part of the world he was in, if he was off on a Sunday, he'd put on his uniform, he'd get up and put on his uniform, and he would go up on the bridge, and he would scour the horizon looking for a church steeple. And when he found a church steeple, he'd start to walk towards it. He didn't care what religion, if it was Pentecost, Roman Catholic, Salvation Army, he didn't care. He walked to church, and sometimes he said it was a long way away. This is what he'd do when he was in different ports on Sunday. And he was telling me about some of their ways that they do things, like they know if you're a stranger, they'll come out with a big tray of candy or things, treats, you know, to welcome you to the church and so on, particularly if you were a military person. And then after church, you know, he'd have a talk to the minister or whatever their religion was, and then he'd walk all the way back again to the ship.
Okay. Can you recall how he felt about, like, Remembrance Day services? Did you all have, like, was that a common thing? Common thing, I'm sorry. Like, how did he feel about the Remembrance Day services that they would have in Sunnyside as time went on?
Well, he went there, but he never spoke of any of it. He never did. His arm, like he never talked about, you know, his arm, how it got damaged or anything like that. But in the hospital in Scotland, he never mentioned anything about that at all. He knew he was in the hospital and he got out and came home. But we knew what happened. The shrapnel hit him in the arm one day when they fired at their ship.
So I guess he was pretty humble about it too. Like he never really. I guess was there any particular reason why he didn't really talk about it much?
Well, most military people don't. No. And on Christmas, he wasn't a drinker. For Christmas, he would buy 2 bottles of rum, a bottle of Lamb's White, and a bottle of Lamb's Amber. He did it every year, but he never ever touched it himself. And he would invite his friends in Sunnyside, whoever wanted to come in, and he'd invite them in. And they'd all sit out in the front room, you know. You remember they used to call it the front room. We weren't allowed in there, of course. And they'd all have their little drink and they'd all go home. And every Christmas, they'd all come. And if there was any spirits left in the bottle, it would be there for the next Christmas because he never touched it.
How did he feel about, like, in his later years? Did he, I don't know, how did he, because from what I understand, because Remembrance Day services and just general interest in the history of the war, like both of the 2 world wars, is growing. More people are attending the services. More
They are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Would you know what his thoughts on that was? Was he
Yeah.
aware?
He used to go to Clarnville to the service they had for the military. And I'd be about 2 weeks shine his boots. I wasn't very old then. So he'd go to Clarnville and walk in the parade and go to the church service. They'd all go in, they'd have the service. And I used to sit down right outside. I wasn't very old and watch him coming in and looking at his boots, see if his boots were shinier than all the rest of them. But he used to get around, you know. He used to get around.
And like, how old were you before you became aware of his service? And
oh, I was in my teens.
And is that he began to become more open about his experience in your teens?
Yes, but not a lot though.
No.
Not a lot, no.
Wow.
No, not a lot.
So how did you figure all this out? Like, if you didn't talk that much?
Well, in bits, and you know, heard from other people, not from him. And we had books too where he was, you know, we read where he was recognized for what he did, and of course he had his medals. And he was pretty friendly. Everybody knew him, you know. And I went down to Chess Mercer's one day. Chess Mercer had a store in Sunnyside. And he used to deal there, you know, and they were pretty good friends and small places, you know. So when I finished my grade 11 in Sunnyside school, I went down. get something from my father. So Mr. Mercer came out, and Mr. Mercer used to call me Little Green. Little Green, that was the name he had on me. So he said, "Hello, Little Green." He said, "I guess your schooling is all over now," he said. I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "To grade 11. Well, he said, "I got something to tell you." He said, "Based," he said, "on your father's credibility, you can come here and buy whatever you want and pay me when you can." Now,
That's a well-known.
I thought that was quite a statement. Yeah.
Now, I'm actually curious now about your mom, though. What did you think of all of this? Like, did she keep quiet about this too, or did she?
My mother was as quiet as anything. She never engaged in any of that. She never talked about it. She just knew what she heard. But I never heard her talk about any of it. No. But my father would always, think about his family first, even though there's a lot of things he couldn't do. But he had a little salmon net. So up the shore from where we lived, there's a little island like ran off. So he decided that him and I would go and run out the salmon net. There's no rules and regulations then like it is now. So we go up and run out along by the net, and he said, "Look at the salmon." Everybody say in the net, look. We get 15, 16 salmon. And then we'd come home and he'd clean them and he'd tag them all. Uncle so-and-so, he'd tag the whole lot of them to 15, and I spent the rest of the day bringing them around Sunnyside to the people. So that was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You can't do it now.
No, you can't. I grew up in the fishery when the.
You did?
Yeah, when the Great Moratorium hit.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that announcement. And
you did?
Oh yes, I remember it. And oh yeah, that was one of those changing moments.
Yeah.
Were there anything like, was he kind of like, say if you were curious, like you knew he served, and I don't know if there's a time that you were curious, like was he just like animate, like no, I'm not talking, or was he just?
Oh no, he wasn't like that. No, he was just quiet.
Yes.
He was very quiet.
But if you really want to know, like he would say a few little things, or he just like in due time.
I can't remember ever of hearing talking about when he served in the war. No. And
I know me, if I was a kid and I knew my dad, I'd be like, "Daddy, tell me."
Yeah.
But I mean, more respect back then, I guess. It's like, yeah, no, if he doesn't want to talk, I guess there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Every spring, when it got down to me driving the car, he wanted to go down to Southwest Arm to visit all his friends, and some of them that served with him in the military. So we would leave, and we would drive down, and he'd go in every house that he knew, and a lot of the people he knew that didn't serve. So we would be down there for a couple of days, going around visiting his friends. And then we'd turn around then on the second day, and we come back home up to Sunnyside. He did that every year. He did that. And I really enjoyed it because listen to them talk. That's when they talked, when they're among themselves. See? And somebody would always rise the conversation.
Yeah, I suppose it's different talking to someone like who's curious compared to talking to someone with the experience. I guess it's more relatable, I guess.
Yes.
That makes it easier,
Yes. But when they came to Sunnyside, with the schooner brought up Sunnyside from St. John's, him and my brother Bertram, they went up the southern shore, fishing up there. And the schooner, of course, was their house, and they fished in smaller boats. Come back to the schooner. He was telling me how nice the people were up there. He said every Friday evening, or every Saturday evening rather, somebody from the community would come down and invite them up for Sunday dinner. He said he can't remember ever being on the ship for Sunday dinner. They'd be in somebody's house. They come down and get them. So that was pretty cool, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
No.
No.
Well, my father's last words were, when he walked up to the rail to jump overboard, I told you he had the rope around his chest and his mouth. He took out the rope out of his mouth and he said, "What in the hell," he said, "am I doing out here this hour of the night?" That was his last word before he jumped.
Because you have to, right?
Yeah.
It's a genuine question, though.
Pretty good, wasn't it?
It's like, what's going on?
That didn't bother him though, so then he jumped. Yeah. Yeah. These are my father's medals. This is the Distinguished Service Medal that he was awarded with. King George V presented him with that medal.
Himself.
Yeah.
The king.
Yeah. And this one here is the Norwegian medal that was presented to him by the King of Norway for what he did for them, the lives he saved for them. And the rest of them are service medals. I got them laid on the bus downstairs on the picture that's down there. Did you see it when we came in?
Oh,
I wear those medals everywhere I go. When I was stationed up in Labrador West, I used to go to the military parades, and I would wear those medals. If your father has passed away, you wear them on the right side. So I was standing in my uniform, my police uniform, and there was a general inspecting the group. And when he got up to me, he said, "Sir," he said, "you're looking like a rather young man," he said, "to be wearing such array of medals." I said, "Sir, they're not mine." "They're not yours?" I said, "No, sir." I said, "They're my father's from the First World War." "My friend," he said, "never take them out," he said. "Wear them every chance you get."
I can tell they mean a lot to you.
And I did.